Hi, my name is Irene Boston, and I wrote a case study on child exploitation and trafficking. I chose this case study because I wanted to bring more awareness to the issue of child trafficking and exploitation and the different forms of exploitation and trafficking. Um, this case study will explore not only the moral and the culture and the legal aspect of exploitation and trafficking, but it will also talk about different factors that play a role in why children are trafficked and how you can prevent more children from being trafficked. When I first started investigating the issue and the topics, I was looking at a wide variety of different forms of exploitations and trafficking, and just wanted to take a deeper look in the world of traffic children and the different things they go through when they do escape or when they manage to get rescued. When I started investigating cases of child exploitation and trafficking, I learned about different types, which include sex exploitation, forced marriages, forced labor, criminal activity, benefit fraud, domestic slavery. These are all some of the major forms of trafficking. And when it comes to child exploitation, children, young persons, male or female, under the age of 18, are the biggest risk factors. A lot of the victims not only go through mental, but they also go through physical abuse, which includes beatings, battering, rape, starvation, forced drug use, the recruitment of transport, transfer, harboring, and receipt of kidnapped children for purpose of adoption, exploitation, and forced labor or slavery. The United States is one of the biggest destitutes of child trafficking, especially California. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Um, it's one of the top three right on drugs and gun trafficking. A lot of these victims go through a lot of psychological trauma, and sexual abuse. Um, they become emotionally detached, a lot of mental health problems, suicidal thoughts. The impact that uh, child trafficking has on the victims is just not mental, but a lot emotional, physical distrust. The purpose of the study was not only to bring awareness, but I talked about the three elements of child trafficking. I talked about 3 stages of child trafficking, the 4 P's, the elements, different forms of child exploitations, what makes the victims vulnerable, whether you can spot child trafficking, how you notice a child's behavior changing. The 4 P's of human trafficking basically gives you an asset on how you could prevent preventing and combating human trafficking through public awareness, educational campaigns. A lot of kids that are trafficked are more on the poverty side or war-torn countries, or kids who's already being abused at home who run away. Protection, prosecution, and partnerships. Human trafficking is the act of recruitment, transportation, transfer, harbor, or release of a person, utilizing threats, use of force, or other forms of coercion, of abduction, fraud, and deception, or the abuse of power. When we talk about human trafficking, Article 3A of the Trafficking in Person Protocol offers the first international agreed upon deception of trafficking in person, which country used to produce their laws and programs to combine the crime. International trafficking versus domestic trafficking. They both occur around the world. International trafficking occurs when dealers transfer a citizen of one country into another country for exploitation. Domestic trafficking occurs when the posting of the crime occur within the country's border and no transitional boundaries is crossed. Human trafficking versus human smuggling. The term human trafficking and human smuggling are frequently used interchangeable, but they aren't the same. So human smuggling always involves a person illegally crossing over an international border. Human trafficking may involve moments inside the person's own country or across any international borders. So very different. So you have the 3 elements of human trafficking, which is act, means, and purpose. So one of the factors of act, the traffickers must commit one or more of the following acts. So it'd be recruit, transport, transfer, harbor, receive, give, receive the benefit, or control. Means using one or more of the following: means violence, threats of violence, sex, abduction, fraud, deception, abuse of power or position of vulnerability. The purpose for exploitation in one or more of the following forms, which is sex, forced labor, slavery, servitude, organ removal, or forced labor. So I will go on to talk about 10 cases of different forms of child trafficking. This is how you tie the whole paper. This is how I tied the whole paper together. First victim name is Liz. Liz was 6 at the time. When her mom forced her into child pornography. From the time she was 6 to 18, she was raped. It happened at her home in the East Coast and throughout the country, including Jackson. The bill will pay that coitus with her, and her mom played on her affection for her. So her mom would tell her, "If you love me, you'll do what I say." Eventually, Liz escaped at 23. She got adopted by a woman named Jenny Wilson, who helped her. She was a victim of not vulnerability, but her mom played on her love for her to get her to do these things. And at one point, Liz will go on to say that she forgot how wrong it felt to get raped and how she got used to it. So that's one form of trafficking, which is child pornography. Natalie got trafficked from Guyana, which is a African country. Her family has struggled to pay for her school fees, so someone gave her an opportunity to come to the U.S. to go to school, but that wasn't the case. When she got there, the father that she was staying with began to physically and sexually abuse her. She wasn't allowed to go to school. She wasn't allowed to the house. She wasn't allowed to have no phone. Um, she got trafficked for domestic servitude, um, which is basically they made her wash the clothes, cook, clean, take care of the kids. Um, she escaped after being beaten severely. She was 13 at the time of being trafficked. Jose, who was 15 at the time when he began the all-out relationship with a 36-year-old man. Um, Now the age gap, I'm tell you that by law, that's rape. He wasn't really trafficked because he was in relationships. Um, he was forced into sex by another guy that he met online, who told him that he had a home and all this good stuff. Jose was looking for love and acceptance, and that's what he found in the men online because he wasn't getting that home because of his religion and him being gay. He wasn't getting that love and affection from his family. Maria was 15 at the time of being trafficked from her home in a Latin American village by a 35-year-old woman who promised her money to help her family. She was trafficked for domestic servitude and sex. So not only did she have to work, but she was also forced to have sex with other men. Eventually, she was rescued by family. Peter and Kevin were trafficked for forced labor. Um, they got paid, but they wasn't allowed to leave. They their paperwork was taken from them. They was living in cramped quarters with other people. They worked 12 to 14 hours, 6 days a week. Um, this was a construction job. Adi Knight was 15. She's working as a stylist in West Africa when she was befriended by a man multiple times her age. Uh, who convinced her to go to Europe with him. Well, he told her that the haircuts could earn 50 times as she made in her home country. Did not get far. Uh, she was sold into sex. She had she had to work as a road sex worker to raise the money for their trip, basically. So when they got to Europe, she had to she was forced to serve as a sex worker. She was constantly abused and raped. She was in a brokers camp with like 20 to 30 other girls. She she would have to pay an impossible sum of $5,000 for her freedom. And she didn't have the money. Her family found her and told police back in her home country. The people that had trafficked her were arrested. Piper was 15. She was from Idaho. She was homeless. Um, she this will make her vulnerable because not only was she a young girl, but she was homeless, which is one of the biggest vulnerabilities amongst traffickers. Is what they look for in their victims. This case happened recently. She's 15 at the time. Uh, 17 when she got arrested for murdering her rapist. But what's so unique about this case is because this isn't the first case of girls who wound up escaping or murdering their traffickers and their rapists and being prosecuted for the crime. She's a victim, but she's not being treated like a victim. And when I say she's not being treated like a victim, when I researched the case about Piper, her stipulations of not going to jail was she had to pay the victim, her predator's family, money. And if she violated the terms of the agreement, she'll be sent back to jail. She wasn't free. She had to go to a home, what people call a halfway home. um, but she was a child. He stole her innocence. He beat her. He raped her. Sold it to multiple different people. So when you look at Piper, you look at a vulnerable 15-year-old who was taken advantage of by this 28-year-old man who trafficked her, who made her do things that was never okay. And the man that she ultimately killed was her abuser. He was 37 years old. Um, his name was Zachary. She pled guilty and she was finally sentenced. But when you talk about the aspects of what makes child trafficking and what makes these children vulnerable, you have to look at Piper. Piper was homeless. A lot of these cases, you have a 15-year-old girl was a hairstylist who was just looking to make more money. You have a 15-year-old girl who was trying to help her family make money. Here you have 15-year-old Jose who was just looking for love and acceptance that he wasn't getting at home from his family. Um, because he was different. He was gay. And growing up in a religious environment, being gay was frowned upon. Um, when you go back to Natalie, who was a 13-year-old who family wanted a better opportunity for her, who sent her to the US to get that opportunity, who was forced to be a servant. And when you go to Liz, was this 6-year-old girl who was put in this unpredictable, unfair situation, not by a stranger, but by her mom, who forced her to child pornography and forced her into having sex. And when you look at these victims and the things that they went through before they were trafficked and the things that they were doing before they were trafficked, it shows you different aspects of what makes each one of these victims vulnerable, what played a factor in them getting trafficked, what played a factor in them being preyed upon by sick individuals who take advantage of these children and take advantage of the fact that all they're looking for in life is love and acceptance and somewhere to go and someone to say that it's going to be okay. When you talk about Piper, her situation is very unfair. It's not like she went and just murdered somebody, like this was just a crime that she was going to commit. She was 15 at the time of being trafficked into sex by a 28-year-old man who she was eventually sold to a 37-year-old man who abused her in many forms, not just sexually, but mentally, physically, emotionally. And when she was back into a corner, she had to do something to save her life. So, do I feel bad for the man that she murdered? No, I feel bad for the young woman who now has to not only pay this man's family, but has to spend 5 years on probation. And if she doesn't by the terms and conditions, she can go back to jail for 20 years. So now I don't think Piper got justice in a sense of when you're looking at her, people don't see a victim. And I don't know if it plays because of her skin color, because she is a minority. And they say that they understand that she's a victim. If you understand that she's a victim, why does she have to pay this man's family? Why she's on probation? Why are you even charging her with a crime when this man abused her in multiple different ways? Um, Tonya was a 13-year-old. She met Eddie at an apartment building in Dallas. Um, she thought Eddie loved her. Um, she would eventually run away with Eddie. Eddie had a drinking problem. Eddie telling you what I want to say, Eddie's behavior changed when he would drink, and that their relationship took a turn. He wasn't just drinking; he was also drinking and taking medicine, which was a very bad combination. Uh, Eddie wanted her to have sex with other men. She kept telling him no. Eddie would use her love for him to pressure her into doing it. She did it one time and it became a pattern, an everyday routine for many weeks, night after night at bars. Uh, he would bring guys to her. She allowed it because she loved him. Um, it took a lot on her body, not just physically but emotionally. She was sold into sex trafficking. Um, and Simone was 16 years old when she was kidnapped and trafficked from Los Angeles by a man she just met. Um, the man told her that he was the pimp and she was his hoe. She was taken into a hotel room where other woman was being held, so it just wasn't her. Um, the pimp used threats against her family to keep her in control. Simone on her desk, found herself desperate for a way out of it. So she played along as much as just she could. When he let his guard down and took a shower, he left the phone on the bed, and she saw opportunity to get the phone, call someone that she knew, and she called her mom. Her mom just basically asked her certain things to try to get a general description of where she was at. Um, she was eventually rescued outside of a 7-Eleven by her family. Carlos' story is a little different. Carlos came from Central America. He came from a wealthy family. He graduated from college. Carlos probably like between, I would say, maybe 18 to 20. Um, he was trying to escape the drug crimes in his country. So he came to the U.S. Looking for a better job and a safer environment. He got a job that would, when he came to the U.S., instead of the work that he was promised, he was working in a traveling carnival. They paid him little to nothing. He lived in cramped and dirty quarters. Uh, they would threaten him if he tried to escape. They would send people to murder his family. They not only became physical but sexually abusive towards him. Eventually, they forced him into having sex. So he became not only a victim of labor trafficking, but also sex trafficking. um,
Right now.